All right, so this is straight from one of the Bite Me Facebook members. Question for Captain Scott Knoll, who obviously throws a lot of flies, does a lot of fly fishing, throws at redfish, throws at trout, and this is a special treat for you today. I actually got him to get his secret tackle box out. We're not going to get to the secret tackle box just yet, but the question is about flies and lures for redfish and trout and what is in the box.
Keep it simple, man. Don't get so tied up and fancy and all this stuff on super realistic. There's a whole lot of really realistic flies out there, and they're just a little bit too much for me. I like utilitarian. That's why redfish crack. Everybody's heard, even non-fly fishermen know, redfish crack. They don't know exactly what it is, but they know that.
Well, they're about to find out.
That's one of the flies that I use. That thing came about because of Andy Packmore. He used to work Fish Tackle Unlimited. He's at Gordy's and Sons now, and he handles the fly fishing over there.
Okay.
And he came up with that fly, and then I kind of tweaked it a little bit, and it's a pretty cool little story with it. But Andy didn't sell it to anybody. Like one of my flip patterns I've sold to the guys at Sightcast, and they're doing it now and producing that fly. And he just never sold it. He said, man, it's just not that unusual. It's not that different, so I don't want to sell it.
Yeah.
So other people are making the fly now, including Sightcast.
Yeah.
This is a waterproof little box. This is my one side of it. This is the old redfish crack. I pulled this one out before John got here because I knew what we were going to do here. The original, Andy just tied this. It was craft fur on the back, put bars on it with a magic marker, and then he would tie this fluff on the front. It's an EP brush, and you just wind it on there. Well, I liked for the head of the fly to be bigger. Something that we think about in fly fishing is pushing water. Yeah. Just like, with a lure, you want it to push some water. So as a result, this would fold way back and close up too much.
So it was too thin.
So I added this up underneath it as a little spot of color. It's just Estaz, and you just wrap it around it, and then that maintains that bulb head of it. So this was the original. This one's probably a 5 or 6 year old fly, something like that. But that's the original redfish crack. There's a lot of different versions of it. This is in what we call a blind or a naked. Doesn't have any weight on it at all. You can do it with bead chain eyes, or you can do it with different size eyes. Like Louisiana, when I was guiding over there, I tied this. This is probably on a number 4 size hook. I'd tie those on a 1/0.
Oh man!
Tarpon hook, and then use big lead eyes on it to get it down faster. This is what Sightcast has come up with. They call it redfish crackling. Got to change it just
crackling.
A little bit.
It does look like crackling.
And they add a little more spice to it. It still has the Estaz up underneath to keep the head out. They added some little rubber legs to it. They did a few other little odds and ends. They put a weed guard on it. And this one is one with bead chain eyes. Okay. So if you're fishing over grass, heavy, thick grass, and real shallow, I like the naked. If it's some thin grass, scattered grass, I want it to get down on top of the grass, I'm going to throw it with a bead chain. Okay. Now, if it's clearer bottom, we have redfish crackling that has lead. Those little orange eyes are painted lead. Yeah. So this one's more like a jig. It's going to dive down. Yeah. Now, if you got mud, you got a cleaner bottom, a sand bottom. That works really well. The thing with redfish crack is it's a style of time. People get real caught up in color. The exact color, the exact how many wraps, how big did you make it, how long is it, how big's the hook. Make it for whatever your fishing situation is, whatever you're trying to get done. It's just a method. It's craft fur, it's Estaz, and it's a wrap. Okay. You can make it shiny and flashy. You can make it dull. And depending on how you fish it and way you maneuver it, it can be crawled around the bottom like a crab. And just easing it along there. It can be hopped. It can be swam. You could swim that, and that'd be a minnow. Yeah. It could be a mud minnow. Yeah. And we call it redfish crack, but we've got all kinds of species on it. Trout, redfish, flounder, pretty much everything along the coast we've caught on it. I even caught a bonefish. I tied a little bitty one, took it down, and caught bonefish on it in Belize. DJ, the guy I talked about in New York, and John, they've caught stripers on it. So it's a very versatile fly. It looks like a bait fish. It looks like a crab. It looks like a shrimp. It can kind of change and morph with whatever you need it to do. Now, if you're getting more in, and these are all from SiteCast. These are their ties. You can buy them on their website, and they've got a lot of dealers around now. Honestly, I forgot what they call this one, but I really like it.
What's the difference on that?
It's a little shrimp fly. It's a little thinner, so you don't have all this fluff up in the front, so it's going to sink a little bit quicker. It's not going to hold up in the water column as much, so you can get away with no eyes on it. So it doesn't dive down, but it will sink a little bit faster. It doesn't have the buoyancy, the extra material, but it has a little shrimpy look to it. You know, that's what a redfish sees. Moving away from them. That's very shrimpy.
That's a shrimp.
It's really shrimpy looking, and you can get it in different colors. You know, I typically go browns and tans and olives. That one's a little fancier one. Probably the same as that one, except that this one got its legs knocked off by a fish, and this one hasn't had his legs knocked off yet. If I had to guess. This is a popper. When they're eating shrimp on top, that's a shrimp.
Man, that's perfect.
And this is all foam, so you pop it. And this is your popper. As you're pulling it, it's pushing water. So that's another one that comes from SiteCast. A lot of almost everything in my box these days is SiteCast. This isn't. This is a fly I picked up at Fishing Tackle just because I wanted some bigger poppers. You know, if redfish get on mullet, or if the jacks show up while I'm out red fishing, this is something that I tie that's just a bait fish. They're on
very much a bait fish profile. Look at that.
If they're on
that
any
right there
kind
is
of
perfect.
minnows,
I mean, you can just see it.
if they're on any kind of rain minnows, it's something I just kind of came up with, just messing around tying. It doesn't really even have a name on it or anything. It's just a fly.
Same premise.
Same premise. The head's tied a little bit different. So this is my day to day. When I open up the box in the morning, it's usually on this side. I've got other flies in the garage that restock this over time. And you can get into some of the crazier stuff on this side.
Look at
that. This is my fly that that's the convict killer. That's the one that I started tying years ago. It's all rabbit fur, and that was for sheep's head. For catching sheep's head. And it's all rabbit fur, so when it sits in the water, you can throw it out there and sit it on the bottom. It always lands like this because of the weight. And it'll just sit there and pulse because of the rabbit fur. You don't even have to move it, and it just looks alive. It comes in the black and the olive.
That's pretty cool.
That's one that I started tying a long time ago, and then the SiteCast boys bought the rights to tie it from me. And this is more redfish crack with a little heavier. So you can see you can get bigger and heavier depending on what water depth you're throwing in, how fast it needs to get down. This is an old timer, one that I used to tie a lot of. That's a rattle. There, and it's tied like a little shrimp. You can sit in here a while, but this is kind of like a weed guard. But it also keeps it upright, so it settles like this. It goes down. It's almost like a rudder. But it has a shrimpy look to it as well.
Definitely.
It's going away. And it rattles. I don't know if the rattle really makes any difference or not, but the rattle makes the body. That's
a little more firm.
It's a glass, like a little glass rattles. That's what's inside here. And then that's a wrap over the top of it. So that one there, and then these are spoon flies that the SiteCast guys tied. That they came up with a different kind of. This is a normal spoon fly. This is what's been made for forever. No weight on it, and it just wobbles around. I'm not huge on throwing them because they're difficult to throw in the wind. They tend to shoot off. You're trying to SiteCast, they look like a frisbee. SiteCast came up and they started putting little lead eyes on it. So now this fly rides more like this in the water and does this as it's going along there. If you're on little bitty bait fish,
Yeah.
little shad, this will work really, really well. But that also makes it easier to throw.
Yeah.
It keeps it going in the right direction. More of those little poppers, and then these are little crab that they make.
Oh, look at that with the blue and the.
And then it's got little arms on it that are rabbit fur.
Yeah.
So when the reds are out there wanting to eat on the crabs, or you're on the big black drum, the big huge 40-pound black drum in shallow water tailing,
Yeah.
that's a money shot right there.
And this is what you'll be throwing pretty much anything in this box.
Anything in this box will get thrown at any one time. But then I always talk about on the podcast, go smaller, go smaller,
Yeah.
go smaller. You got to keep going smaller. This is the small box. It kind of hides way back there in the back of my bag.
This is your secret
It
box?
doesn't come out real often, but when it does come out, things have gotten tough. that means that we're struggling.
Look at this.
So these are little bitty stuff.
You can see on your finger how small they are.
So this is like little bonefish flies. Little crazy Charlies, and I forgot all the names of the different bonefish flies, but it's your typical bonefish fly stuff. You can go to any fly shop and start picking up these little small flies like that. That one right there, I smoked the drum on it one day. That's
barely the size of the tip of your finger.
Yeah.
It's not the size of your tip.
That's a size 8 or either a 10 or an 8 sized hook. But those little puppy drums, those little 3 or 4 pound drum, will eat it up. It's just a little shrimp. I mean, it's like when they're eating grass shrimp, and I'll throw it on redfish too. This time of year, whenever things get tough, and you start seeing those little bitty shrimp jumping along the edges, that right there will get a redfish's attention, and
look at that.
you can catch them. So
Then you got crab
then
imitation.
there's crabs, all these different little crabs. These are from some trips I made to Belize, trying to catch a permit, which permit don't eat. Stupidest fish in the world.
Yeah.
But these are all bonefish and permit flies, but redfish eat crabs. We know that.
Look at that, crazy.
And these will work really well on redfish. When the redfish start nosing the bottom, there's usually that 2 or 3 week period in the springtime, especially on the upper coast, where whatever you're throwing in front of them, they're just ignoring it.
Yeah.
But their heads are down. You can tell they're moving around. They're doing something.
Yeah.
Try the crab. Try something that's real crabby looking. It doesn't have to look exactly like a crab, but if it has the same profile.
Yeah.
And if you're looking in the water, you're seeing those little dime-sized little bitty crabs kind of swimming along on
That's
top. That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's what's happening. And so there's all different kind of little crab patterns. You're usually going to find them in the bonefish and permit section. They're not really in the redfish section so much.
Yeah.
But when I
But
say
they work.
when I say go smaller, I'm
I mean, look
talking-
at that. Look how small
I'm
they are.
talking tiny.
Yeah.
You can go this small and smaller
And catch.
and catch fish on.
Yeah.
This is just a little thing that I just made up one time, just goofing around, but it lands on the water like nothing. I mean, like when it's super, super calm and the
It doesn't even hardly
redfish
ripple.
are spooky,
Yeah.
you can land this thing on top of water and it just sits there, and then it soaks a little bit of water and it just really slowly sinks, and you can twitch it along. And I've caught some gigantic redfish on that. And
look at the size of the hook.
Yeah, that's a size 10 hook. So that's what I mean by flies don't have to be super realistic.
Yeah.
They just have to move in a realistic manner.
Yeah.
You want them to act right in the water. You don't. Redfish aren't going to come up there. You typically
Wait a minute.
really look it over and go, that.
I think that's rabbit fur.
Yeah, that crab's got too many legs. I don't think that's right. I counted them, and it's not right. So it's more about the movement of it. If it moves like something that they eat and generally resembles something they eat,
They'll eat it.
chances are good they're going to eat it.
Let me ask you this before we get done with this. Like you were showing me on these, the Oh, actually, it was the other side, the redfish crack. A lot of times, especially with like corkies and some other, even some plastics and stuff, you kind of have to tune the lure as you go. And I thought of this when you said that one got hooked up. How do you like keep these lures? Do you have to tune them, so to speak, keep the fur out, or once they get wet, are they good?
They're good. They're fine wet. I typically will dry them out outside the box
Okay.
just to keep the moisture out of these boxes.
Yeah.
Because with this foam, you start getting wet flies in here, it'll get moist inside
deteriorate,
there,
yeah.
and everything they'll all start rusting.
Yeah.
Inside these little crevices, they'll rust really bad. But as far as tuning them, you tune them on the bench
Yeah.
when you're tying them by adding weight, adding lighter weight. You know, there's all different sizes of these lead eyes.
Yeah.
There's tiny ones on up, really large
Oh, you
ones.
can kind of see the difference here.
And these are hollow. That's bead chain.
Yeah.
That's, typical bead chain like you pull a light switch with.
Yeah.
Same stuff. You just cut them off
Yeah.
and use them on here. And so they're hollow, but it's still a little bit of weight.
Yeah.
It still adds a little bit to it. Then you go without anything. And typically I'll have a bunch of these tied. If I wasn't building this house, I'd have a whole bunch of flies tied. And I'll have them tied thinner with less materials. Say this is on a wire this long and it's fuzzy, and you wrap it around. And I'll do like 3 wraps. This one's probably a 3 wrap. Then I'll do one that's got 2 wraps on it. Then I may do one that has 4 or 5 wraps.
Just different weights, different.
And it's just different amounts of bulk on it.
Yeah.
The more bulk, the slower it's going to sink.
Yeah.
And so then I've got them in the box and I'm looking at them going, okay, that one, what I'm using right now isn't sinking fast enough to get down to the fish.
So you have another one that's.
So I've got one that's thinner.
Yeah.
Then I've got one that's thinner than that. Then if I got to go to the bead chains to get down to them, I try to avoid going to the lead because I just don't like the lead dropping it down. It'll go down and get into the oysters. It'll go down and get into grass, whatever, and it immediately hangs up.
Yeah.
Now, if you're sight casting to redfish that are milling about and they're nose down and they're in the grass and you're a good caster,
Then you
can drop it
Then
right
you have
there.
to, yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah.
But if you have to retrieve that fly, if you're going to throw it past it and retrieve it by, that lead's going to get hung up on something.
Yeah.
Chances are really good.
Well, that's terrific, man.
You're not going to get a better little tutorial on all things Gulf Coast fly fishing than you just got right there from Capt. Scott Null. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and of course we have our Bite Me group page as well. Your questions are always welcome, and that was a great one, and you guys all benefited from it. We'll talk to you next time right here on Bite Me Shorts.